Michael J.
So we have a whole new world of Magic Fests now. Grand Prix are now in 6-round flights on Magic the Gathering Arena.
Let's just see where this goes. It'll be interesting. It is definitely a new experience. And I, for one, am glad that they're moving forward with some more realistic and much safer support, like the next few months. Not really. This isn't like a great time for in-person big events. So it's awesome that they've gone to the trouble of organizing some highly competitive events online. And already we have an interesting standard event.
Oh, I mean, I'm shocked at how different and cool and sick some of the decks that have been qualifying are. So the way that these events work are there's like 3 or 4 every day that CFB Events is doing, and they're 6 rounds long. And if you go 5-1 or better, so 5-1, 6-0, whatever, you get to play in what's essentially a Grand Prix this weekend. But there's like not really that to say that there's not coverage of this isn't fair, because there is. Like yesterday during one of the events, I took a few minutes out of my day to watch the great Reed Duke and the legendary Brian David Marshall cover one of them, which is awesome. They're like running these basically 24/7. But like there's not like any place that's like a repository of all the top 8 deck lists. So one of the things that's interesting about it is the winning deck lists are just getting posted on Twitter by people who play in the events. And so I looked at some of them, and it's awesome. Like the totally different decks than we've seen performing, and some of them are really exciting and hot new technology left, right, and center. There are multiple new teamer decks that are out there.
So yeah, the teamer decks are kind of interesting, right? Like so first of all, there's the one that strays a little less far from the path.
Yeah.
The one that's, if you can even call this traditional, but traditional teamer, where it's mostly just the blue-green deck splashing, but instead of splashing for the sweeper, it's got Scorching Dragonfire and Rowl's Outburst.
Yeah.
Scorching Dragonfire is definitely a card we see from, popping up all over the place. But like Rowl's Outburst ×3, what do you think of that?
So this is the version. Mattia Rizzi went 5-1 in a Magic Fest qualifier earlier this week, and this is a version that was played by Crockies. I actually watched Crockies play a little yesterday. I think Crockies might have also qualified, but I'm not sure. It was pretty deep in the tournament. This version is out there, actually. I think the Rouse Outburst is the least of the weird things, right? So it's got...
You talking about all the permission?
Yeah, this deck is like... This is like a Teamer Reclamation deck. 4 Expansion Explosion, all right, predictable. It's got 4 Uro, okay, predictable. 4 Growth Spiral, predictable. Thess's Intervention ×2. We've seen that. Rouse Outburst, you've already noted. Okay, that's a little bit weird. This deck has got 4 copies of Mystical Dispute main deck and 2 Negates and an Aether Gust.
And that's on top of the 2 Interventions. Who plays with 8.5 counterspells main deck?
It's insane.
That's wild. That's right? Cool. Like, this is like what real Reclamation draw go. You play the Reclamation and then you're just untapped for your draw go.
Yeah, I don't have any clue what the play patterns are for this deck. I don't think it's that different. When I was watching Crockies play, it was a sideboarded game, and Crockies had 3 Night Pack Ambushers in play and 1 on top of their library, which had been scryed with a Temple of Epiphany. So I was just like, okay, I know how that deck works, but like this deck but it's a Reclamation deck, right? So, I mean, the other big thing, Patrick, in this deck is 1 Blast Zone. The Blast Zone is big game in this deck. Or that's what they say.
Yeah, it's really cool for giving these kind of decks some additional ways to interact with permanents and be a little less reliant on Brazen Borrower. Additionally, once you cut the red sweepers, it's kind of nice to still have access to a sweeper,
Yeah. So, like, this deck isn't as badly behind against Teferi, I guess, right? Because it can blast them to Teferi. You could just...
Well, mainly it's just all the Mystical Disputes and Negates.
Oh, that's true. Just keep it off the battlefield.
Yeah, that's the big thing here is just how much permission it has that is effective against Teferi.
But I mean, I guess once the Teferi's in play, you can still try to interact with it with some of these red spells, with the Rouse Outburst. I guess you can Expansion Explosion a Teferi if...
Yeah, but that's just not that big of a part of the range of what matters. It's more realistic that you'd surprise drop Brazen Borrower in response,
Yeah.
or just on your own turn, get it off the table so that now your Mystical Dispute negate can... And you can't wait until it's on the battlefield to Borrower. You'd have to actually do it in response and kind of force them to bounce the Borrower again or something, but the I think it's mainly about the permission to keep it off the table.
But this deck, I think it's very complicating. Not to say that it's complicated. It's complicating. Like, I think I have a lot of routines in my head about how standard matches are supposed to go, and I think that a lot of those rules are broken if you're playing against this version versus the versions that I'm used to seeing with either Storm's Wrath or, Big Nissa. So,
well, I happen to always like Rouse Outburst. I do get a little apprehensive about just playing too many 4s, but without the red sweeper, without Storm's Wrath, you do have a little extra bandwidth.
It's not that bad, right? Because you can go either you can go like Wilderness Reclamation into Rouse Outburst, which is a very natural sequence, or even just like the Growth Spiral kicks you from 2 to 4 pretty fast. This isn't like a regular deck with a ton of 4s and 4X spells. It's a deck with at least 8 main deck land accelerators and all this other stuff going on.
So the other version of Teamer that goes even further down this path of sort of the blue-green flash and blue-red flash decks, the version that kind of hybridizes with the blue-green and blue-red flash decks even more is actually 4 main deck Night Pack ambushers, like on top of 4 Frilled Mystics.
Yeah.
That's like, now you're all the way doing it. And then oh, go ahead. Yeah.
This deck is wild. So Edgar Mahales qualified with this version. It's like time warping way, way backwards to the original blue-green flash decks, like prior to the one that like Brad and company played Nissa in, right? And then it also just jams all these Teamer Reclamation cards into that shell. That's the way I look at it. It's
not even that many of those cards. Like, if you look, this deck is like definitely like 2/3 Simic Flash, 1/3 Teamer Reclamation.
Is Hydroid Crisis a Simic Flash or a Teamer Reclamation card? Because I think neither.
Well, he doesn't have it, does it? Oh, no, he does. He does. Just one, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the Miser's one. But, I mean, I don't know, dude. Are you really telling me you want to play 2 Uros?
I don't know. This deck is insane to me. I would make this deck so different if you told me that this is the deck we're going to have, Michael J. Wilderness Reclamation, Spectral Sailor. I'm like, oh, Wilderness Reclamation, Spectral Sailor. That sounds unbeatable for some matchups. I'm in, right? Like, I would not find myself with 2 Bonecrusher Giants as the next card that was in that list. If you told me we were going to play Wilderness Reclamation, powering up Spectral Sailor, 2 Bonecrusher Giants, 4 Expansion Explosion would not be on my radar. And then a sideboard of mostly red removal spells and 2 Shifting Ceratops. That's not where my head would go.
I think once you have the Expansion Explosion, the red removal in the sideboard kind of naturally follows.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, traditionally Simic Flash decks have a lot of cards like Quench, Aether Gust, Negate. This deck only has Frilled Mystic, and, there's 3 Mystical Disputes and 3 Aether Gusts in the sideboard, so this deck is...
Well, there's the interventions, too. The 3
I always forget about interventions' power syncness. I always think about it, it's inspiration.
What more do you want in this world than a 2-for-1?
This deck...
so which of these 2 do you like better?
I think I like the Mahales version better, because I like Spectral Sailor. If you're going to go this direction, Spectral Sailor Wilderness Reclamation seems bonzer-tastic to me. Like, you just, like... I personally think that Bant is the best deck in the format, so Spectral Sailor Wilderness Reclamation, if it resolves, is just going to crush a lot of decks. And especially if, the red decks aren't shocking anybody anymore. Maybe, I think they're back to shocking people. You can't get away with this for too long, but I love that interaction, those two cards. I also think catching someone with Frilled Mystic feels real good, and I think that Wilderness Reclamation Nightpack Ambusher seems insane. It seems so powerful. So the weird thing about this deck is it can't cover the Nightpack Ambusher. Like, it can play it, and then the whole point of that was like you're supposed to get a fast Ambusher out with Growth Spiral or something, and then counter their next three things while the Ambusher killed them. Right? This deck doesn't have that aspect, which I do think is very odd.
Well, I mean, the other thing is, how is this deck gonna be a Teferi? Isn't that kind of hard?
His deck is very bad against Teferi. Very, very bad.
So why would you want to play this version?
You gave me a choice between those two decks to play.
Because I like
this version more than the other deck. But
I was gonna say, what if you just put two Sailors in the other deck?
I mean, I'm sold now, right? Like, that was the thing I liked about it. And even as the Nightpack Ambushers, they just happen to be in the sideboard. Yeah, I think the other deck, with all its permission, is very differently textured against the Teferi and against the environment in general. Also, nobody plays around Negate Game 1. That it's just not a card that people are like, oh, does he have a... Negate isn't the one that they're going for in their head. I think 4 Dispute main deck is also... That's such a spoiler. Just get him.
Dude, I could be into that.
All right. I guess I'm into the Crocky's deck then.
I mean, honestly, I'm still just... I would play Bant. But
yes, for sure I would play Bant. There's no question I'm playing Bant. But between these two decks... I mean, they have a lot of crossover between the two of them. They can probably learn from each other, right? Like, the Flash deck can get Blast Zone, maybe, right? And the Reclamation deck can get Spectral Sailor, like you said. That would be cool. Both of those things are cool. I don't know about playing 2 Uros. That makes no sense to me.
It feels like you'd want more of that.
Yeah.
So is this Bant list kind of like the embodiment of what you're looking for? It's not really straying from, it's kind of pure, for Elspeth conquers death, for Nissa who shakes the world, for Teferi Time Raveler, for Uro, for Growth Spiral. So you got like then you're rounding it out with the Shatter the Sky and 1 Dream Trawler, 1 Aether Gust.
So we're talking
2 Arboreal Grazers, the mathematically perfect number we've established.
So we're talking about Roman Fusco's list that Roman used to go 6-0 in the qualifier yesterday. It's awesome. He's a good friend of mine. I had to wrestle him to play Bant instead of Sultai the night before, but just credit where credit is due. This is Matt Sperling's list. So I'm a big fan of this list, but I'm not a big fan of Bant in general. But this is Sperling's list. If it were me, I think I would not play the 1 Agent of Treachery in the
That is literally the card I was looking at.
I do not like that card.
I love 74 of this, especially the use of 4 Devout Decree.
Yeah, so I would not play the Agent of Treachery. The main things that I like about this list, like you said, the Arboreal Grazers. We had a discussion about this, should we play Arboreal Grazer or not? I said, Roman, you need to get lucky in order to get this, and Arboreal Grazer is one of the best get lucky cards in the format. He beat Sandy Dog MTG when Sandy Dog MTG had a perfect draw on the play, just because he hid behind the Grazer, saved him 4 points of damage, and accelerated him into Shatter the Sky the turn that Sandy Dog played Torbrain. So I'm like, without the Grazer, would have lost the match. And so I love the Grazers. I would want to play a second Dream Trawler in the main deck, but outside of those two things,
Security Blanket. I agree with Sperling.
Yeah, you like one?
I like 1.
I mean, this is very close to the list I would play. I mean, we're really nitpicking over 2 cards.
Yeah, you got a second one in the sideboard anyway.
Do you like Tolsimir? I'm actually not a huge fan of Tolsimir.
Normally I'm not that big of a fan of it, but it actually seems like it'd be kind of decent right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't mind the Tolsimir.
Yeah,
Oh, good.
This deck is very, very close to perfect to me. 4 Elspeth Conquerors deck.
It might be perfect.
Favorite part.
Honestly, right now, not just like with how he's been playing, but the way he's been, like the theory he's been talking behind some of his decisions, I'm not so sure. Like if it's, for my dollar, I kind of am in the space of if Sperling said it, it was probably right. Like I might not know why what agent of that's what I'm saying is that I might not know why the 1 Agent of Treachery is the perfect 75th card.
Yeah.
But like sometimes you gotta sometimes you gotta give them some loose action. But I don't know. Sometimes you just want to like go over the top and Asian Treachery into next Tuesday.
But what if we went to only 28 lands and played a second Dream Trawler? Do you see that Temple of Plenty hiding between the Dream Trawler and the Tamiyo? That's literally...
No, I'm playing 29. No, right. I love it. I would play 29.
Yeah, I mean...
And I love only 2 Fabled Passage.
Oh, that was... We established that last week.
Yep.
This
deck might be mathematically perfect.
So... Let's say that this deck is very close to mathematically perfect. If it's an archetype question, for sure I'm behind Bant, right? This looks like a pretty great version, and given recency of results or whatever, this is a version that took it down 6-0 yesterday.
Besides, when I look at this, the 74 it's not like it's the exact 74 I would have had. It's the 74 that I would have after having seen this, because it makes so much sense.
Yeah.
To me, once you get that first 74 so perfect, I'm giving you the 75th card. There's no way that you could be this right about the other 74 and have it not at least be worth riding on, like, unless... just in general, if there was something else you specifically needed to make room for, I guess. But to me, the first 74 earns the 75th spot.
Yeah. One thing I would note about this list versus the ones we were talking about last week, no Knight of Autumns, main deck or sideboard. 0 Knight of Autumns.
Well, that's partly because I think once you have 4 Devout Decree, and that's one of the things I love about this so much, is having 1+2 Aether Gust and 4 Devout Decree.
And 1 Glass Casket.
What a plan. That's the real deal. That's somebody who is realistic about life and is willing to do what it takes to bury him.
Yeah.
But like the Sultai deck you were talking about, there was a good example of that this weekend, right?
Yeah, so I actually thought this was really worth talking about. Yuta Takahashi played it, and Yuta only went 5-1, and to be fair, his loss was to Bant. But this deck is super different than the ones we've been talking about before because of the inclusion of a card that he calls out in the deck title, which is Cavalier of Thorns.
Yeah, it's interesting. Once you're going to play like 4 Cavalier of Thorns and only 3 Nissa Who Shakes the World, it's a little bit of a statement.
Well, I think the big thing here is Cavalier of Thorns has 6 toughness, which means that it's pretty hard for Dream Trawler to get through. It's not impossible, right? But this is like a legit card for holding off Dream Trawler. This is like, my whole thing against Sultai before was Sultai doesn't beat Dream Trawler. Now there's a card that can get in Dream Trawler's way. Respect.
And it's not like the 4 Thought Erasures is nothing either, right?
No. But you know a card that Yuta didn't play? Your favorite. Agonizing Demise ×0 in the main deck or sideboard.
Yeah, that right there has already just single-handedly elevated the deck up to a full tier.
Yeah. It's a minus.
I love cutting the bad cards.
-2 terrible, unplayable card.
They're not unplayable.
+2 Growth Spiral in the same mana slot. I'm in. That's a huge improvement. This deck's got basically 4 of all the sweet cards. Basically 4, right? 3 Nissa, like you said, 3 Casualties of War, 3 Aether Gust, and then to make room for 2 copies of the Golgari Pelukranos. And then, tons of land. I think that Sultai has a lot of the same stuff going for it that Bant does, which is basically Growth Spiral and Uro combined with card drawing and a little permission and some Planeswalker bombs. I'd really have to study this. I think the addition of Cavalier of Thorns is just really, really big game in terms of pairing up against Dream Trawler. I mean, it's still not as good as having Dream Trawler yourself, I think, but at least you have a defense for the most.
I do. Card. I don't know. Dream Trawler is okay. I think Cavalier of Thorns is pretty dope.
Have you switched your allegiance?
The interaction. No, I play 1 Dream Trawler because I think Bant's a better deck.
Yeah.
Okay. And I don't think Cavalier of Thorns suits a Bant deck the same way that it suits Sultai. In Sultai, being able to power up 4 Uro and 2 Pelukranos, and then also, once you're going to play Sultai, you can't play Dream Trawler. And you just play a different game,
When I was saying you changed your allegiance, I thought you were saying that Cavalier of Thorns makes Sultai cool enough that you would potentially go towards Sultai instead of Bant. Thank you for revising that, because I wouldn't go that far, although I super respect the Cavalier here.
Yeah, I think the Cavalier, I like Cavalier of Thorns more than Dream Trawler. I like Elspeth Conquers Death more than I like Cavalier of Thorns.
Well, yeah, Elspeth Conquers Death is the main card that makes Bant. I think it's just the deck. I mean, that card combined with Bant's amazing threats, right? Like, it has Nissa, Dream Trawler, even getting back to Fairy is often insane. But the ability to just kill Uro dead permanently is such a big game. And then the combination of Elspeth Conquers Death plus Teferi, you know, when you bounce it back to your hand to replay it, that is filthy.
Well, I think that the Bant deck just does such a good job of putting you on the back foot between Uro, Teferi, Nissa, who shakes the world, Growth Spiral, putting you ahead of the game. There's just a lot of stuff in this deck that kind of puts you on the back foot. And if you ever, first of all, if you're already on the back foot, Elspeth Who Conquers Death can just bury you, right? But if you're winning, Elspeth Conquers Death can actually turn the tide. So, I think that I still am on Team Bant, but this is a substantial improvement to the Sultai archetype. So this looks real.
One of the things that I thought was really impressive about watching the Bant deck play, I saw a match where Elspeth Conquers Death came down, killed Annex. So killing Annex is insane, right? Because it exiles it. No satyrs are created as the setup. And then follow-up was Shatter the Sky against a Torbrand. But then Chapter 2 hit, during that same window. And so the red deck would have had a window to, like, refill their hand with Light Up the Stage, but couldn't cast them because of Chapter 2. I just thought that was, like... I've never really thought about... I always thought Chapter 2 was kind of annoying, but that actually seemed really, really cool in terms of the turn the tide, buy time, buy a little more time, and then we're going to party, right? Because whatever's coming back is going to be there for you at that point of the
game. Sure. I don't know, man. I think this is a cool advancement. You were mentioning something about an advancement in the sack, like the Witch's Oven, like Cauldron Cat style. Like who's Cauldron Cat Witch's Oven deck were you talking about?
So Mattia Oneto went 5-1 to qualify with a black-red sacrifice deck. Mattia didn't play any Croxes, which I thought that was kind of weird. But the thing that was included instead of Croxa, to get your take on this, 2 copies of Dreadhorde Butcher to go with 2 copies of Rankle Master of Pranks in kind of the haste zone, right? So Dreadhorde Butcher is not a card that I've seen in this archetype before.
That's interesting. Yeah, I'm not sure how to unpack that one. I mean, seems like it'd be good if you're expecting a lot of red, but is this actually how you want to fight decks like Sultai and Bant?
Well, just anecdotally, Mattia went 4-1 against Bant, and then 1-0 against Sultai. So I don't know.
Okay,
like
there you go.
4 wins out of 6 against Bant, and then 1 against Sultai. Those are the 2 big kind of Uro card drawing decks, and these innovations seem to help carry that strategy forth. Sideboard cards, nothing too crazy, 2 Agonizing Remorse, an Epic Downfall. What do you think about Farika's Libation? That seems like it's a very card, but it will kill a Dream Trawler.
Yeah, I guess.
If they don't have a Grazer in play, like that's the bad part.
I don't know. Yeah, I guess it's okay. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, this archetype doesn't really do it for me anyway. And to me, I like Rankle, and I think Dreadhorde Butcher is a fine enough card.
But that's the big difference, right?
It seems surprising to me that those changes would be enough to really turn the tide, and that it wouldn't just be a sample size sort of survivor bias. But
I mean, this is exactly the kind of tournament that will give rise to what you're citing right now, right? So the only decks that we really see are the ones that are potentially subject to survivor bias.
Yep. I don't mind not playing Croxa, though, by the way. But then again, I guess I maybe I don't fully understand black red anyway, because I see the black red decks people play, and they always look like a deck that I would play test for a bit to help prepare people's decks, but that it doesn't look to me like I'd be likely to want to play it. But I don't know. It's fine. Is Farika's Libations really better than more like Rankles?
Well, it depends what you want to get with it, right? Like if you're trying to penetrate a Dream Trawler, Rankle is not a reliable way to do that, right? Like the Dream Trawler could potentially just be on defense. And Farika's Libations,
If they don't swing,
yeah.
who doesn't swing?
I mean, I guess
you got
I'll swing.
Yeah.
But I think it's like very inaccurate because if somebody just has, an Arboreal Grazer or something, this entire line of strategy is out the window. No Crocus main deck or sideboard seems wackadoodle to me.
I don't know. This is a cool deck though. It's awesome I'm going to be real interested to follow this sort of approach if the results continue to if this archetype can continue to put those kind of results up against Bant and Sultai, I mean that's a big game.
Well, it's an enormous game. What do you think about? I mean, I guess we talked about Black Red against Teamer a little bit last week. Do you think that there's any hope for this against these nouveau riche Teamer decks that are hybridizing 4 different decks and powering up Spectral Sailors and scorching Dragonfire instead of Storms? Any of that kind of stuff. Do you think that this is good in that format or worse?
Well, I don't know. It both kind of randomized. It seems like both of those decks are aspiring to make some changes, cognizant of Bant and Sultai, and they kind of just randomize against each other. Neither one's really targeted each other. I mean, this is in contrast to like the standard prelim today with Fast Fake 5-0ing it. It's the same sort of a deck, but instead of those 4 flex spots you mentioned, the Rankle and the Dreadhorde, there are 3 Croxes and a Timuret chosen from death. Plus, I don't know if it counts as a stylistic choice or if it's like a meaningful departure in the strategy, but the use of 4 Robber of the Rich.
Ooh.
Yeah.
See, now I'm excited.
And that's instead of the Gutter Balls. Replacing Gutter Bones with Robber of the Rich. Worse on your curve, but, that's a spicy card.
It might be worse on your curve. The deck has, like, Cauldron Familiar and Witch's Oven to play on turn 1 still. Claim that the Firstborn is a 1 casting cost card, to fill a mana hole. And call a spade. Robber of the Rich, on the play at least, is a much higher quality card than Gutter Bones. I guess it costs twice as much mana, but it's really going to pay you off sometimes.
Yeah, I could believe it. Yeah, I don't know. Are you into would you want to blend these 2 styles? The other thing is, Fast Fake used 4 Leyline of the Voids in the sideboard.
I think that combined with these Lava Coils, which obviously exile, and Scorching Dragonfires, which also exile. I don't know. I guess Agonizing Remorse also exiles. Fast Fake sideboard, I think, has a real problem with the graveyard. Right?
Well,
15 cards that all exile.
I don't know if I would call it a problem. There's a target. Fast Fake plays one way. And that's not even counting the Timuret chosen from death in the main deck for more exiling.
This is like, I don't know, right, what was going through Fast Fake's head when they made their deck, but Fast Fake has a problem with the graveyard. Doesn't like the graveyard. Obviously this version is way more aware of the mirror match, right? If you're going to play Scorching Dragonfire, Lava Coil, and Leyline of the Void, other people are not going to be buying their Cauldron Familiars back very well. That's a big thing. This version didn't play the Black Saga that is normally seen as a 2 of in this archetype, but Leyline of the Void just takes a little of the oomph out of that card also.
Yeah, but I mean, like, neither did Matea.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, I think they might just be moving away from it. The Sultai deck, Erebos, 2 main deck Erebos' interventions. What do you make of that? On the topic of exiling cards. In Esmond 1?
Esmond 1's 4/1 deck. I don't know. I guess it's an instant. I mean, like, I barely have this card on my playables list, let alone as a 2-of in the main deck. It seems very narrow to me, right? So if you're going to be -X, I mean, fine, you gain some life. That's fine. It's a very expensive way to do it. And I don't know. Exiling this many cards from graveyard, maybe there is a metagame going on that I'm not perceiving from my vantage point of liking Bant, that the graveyard is such a thing that we need to be targeting right now. I guess this is a sweet thing to do in response to Chapter 3 of Elspeth Conquers Death. I mean, you can take the oomph out of Bant's best card. That's a thing.
Hitting their Uro also.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
I guess if you're playing in a metagame, which to a degree we are, where there are cards that have the keyword escape, like, you know, most notably Uro, but also Kroxa and, you know, a certain Planeswalker, etc., that a 1-for-1 card that removes a card from the graveyard and puts it in the exile, that's basically like duressing someone, right? If you're playing in that kind of a metagame. So maybe there's something there. Like, the math is just different than the traditional math right now because of the escape mechanic. But it's
a lot of life gain too.
Is it?
Against aggro sometimes? You can gain a lot of life.
I mean...
No, I'm saying, like, if you just use, just gain 10 life or whatever.
Okay, it costs 3 mana to kill, call it a Phoenix of Ash, okay?
No, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the, like, if you -X something,
yeah, and
gain 5 life, that's pretty good, right?
So you, like, basically gained 4, right? That's what you're saying? Like, if you kill a Phoenix of Ash, for sake of...
Well, it depends on how much mana you spend. I'm saying that, like, you're a deck that already has Nissa who shakes the world. Sometimes you do it really big.
Okay. And I guess the fact that it's an instant gives it a lot of flexibility, but it's... I don't know. I have a hard time getting behind this. I would much rather just cast that Cavalier that Yuta had.
So the last deck I kind of wanted to touch on was yet another style of teamer.
Okay.
Did you see the Lucky Clover teamer deck? So this is gold to cocked. Yeah, and I don't know if it's done cooking yet, and it was only 3/2 in the event, but this is just such a different teamer deck than the other ones we've been seeing. Not only is it not a Wilderness Reclamation deck, it's a it's a adventure deck with Edgewall, Innkeeper, and Lucky Clover, and then Fae of Wishes, Lovestruck Beast, Brazen Borrower, Bonecrusher Giant, Beanstalk Giant. Okay, that's a lot of really good adventures. Clearly, that's just like when you play 3 colors, you can just play all the really good ones, right?
Yeah.
And then 3 Escape to the Wilds to round it out.
So the sweet play pattern here, I think, is turn 2 Lucky Clover, turn 3 Beanstalk Giant, which gives you a double Rampant Growth immediately, which you can potentially get, like, there's 3 islands and 2 mountains in this deck. Obviously, you had to have had a green source to play the Beanstalk Giant's front end anyway. But then that will set you up for either double Brazen Borrower or double Bonecrusher Giant with the Lucky Clover in play. But that's not all. You can basically untap into Escape of the Wilds or Nissa Who Shakes the World the next turn, right? So that's really powerful sequence. I had
and Lucky Clover with Fae of Wishes.
Oh yeah, but that's
of course, right?
That's just rubbing it in. That's no fun. So
I don't know. It seems kind of fun to me.
Well, like if you're in one of the games where you can have a Lucky Clover in play and then resolve a granted on the Fae of Wishes, if you're not mana screwed, you're probably not going to be because there's 27 land into the deck. You're probably just going to win there, right? If they don't kill you immediately, like you get to double Demonic Tutor for like the 2 best cards against them. hit your next 3 land drops. Yeah, it's very powerful.
So I appreciate that one. Gets my ingenuity of the week. As far as what I would play Sperling's List.
Yeah, I am very down with the Bant deck, and congratulations to all the people who've qualified so far, but especially Roman because he played the Bant deck. And he credited me.
To me, it's all equal. They're all winners
now,
in my book.
The people who give Michael J a mention get plus 5 points.
Get out of here.
Get out of here. Plus 5 points. And Sperling's List is fantastic. And I think you're probably right. I think that given how well the first 74 went, maybe I'll buy into that agent.
I would at least just send him a message. He's very helpful on the social media.
Yeah.
But all right, stay safe, man. See you next week.
All right, bye-bye.
Later.
Life didn't work so great. Tried to play dredge, it's a jailer hate. Ghostly prison waiting for my untapped phase. Your core trapped in amber stasis state.